Welcome back, friends. I'm so excited you're here for another episode of Share Your Story with Ellie. I'm your host, Ellie B. Today on the show, you get to hear a conversation with one of my dear friends, Kennedy. Kennedy is originally from Chattanooga, Tennessee, but moved to Jacksonville a little over a year and a half ago. I knew quickly that Kennedy and I were kindred spirits and that we love to talk and giggle, always find a way to have the best time, and we find so much joy in connecting with new people. When I originally planned this episode, I thought our conversation would center around her story of moving and how she just connects really well with other people. But it turned into something so much deeper and so much greater. Kennedy is absolutely hysterical, lighthearted, and oh so much fun. But she's also a deep well of wisdom who cares deeply for others and ultimately wants to love and follow God wholeheartedly. I cannot wait for you to hear more of Kennedy's story. Okay. Hi, Kennedy. Welcome to Share Your Story podcast.
Thanks, Ellie. Thanks for having me here, and never really thought I'd end up on a podcast. I've always really enjoyed listening to podcasts. I would say I'm intrigued by it, but never thought I'd actually have a chance to be here. So I'm excited.
I feel like you have a good podcast voice.
It's funny you say that because I feel like I sound like, this is actually hilarious. One time I was living in Switzerland and this lady from Korea said, "You sound like that American boy. You know, the bacon is good for me, boy."
You are kidding. Wait, the one from Mom Swap or whatever?
Mom Swap with King Curtis. Everyone, if you have not looked up King Curtis in a while, one time I was told by a lady in Switzerland, a Korean lady in Switzerland, that I sound like King Curtis. And honestly, when you go back and listen to The Bacon is Good for Me, I can't quote the whole thing. I won't. I'll spare you guys. But I couldn't tell if that was the biggest diss or the biggest compliment I've ever received. So do with that what you will.
There are so many layers to that in Switzerland, Korean woman. And Curtis the Bacon guy.
So now you have King Curtis 2.0 on Share Your Story with Ellie.
I mean, I'm so honored. How could I have ever dreamt of such a gift? Honestly, though, both of us want to have our foray into being TikTok famous, and I feel like this could be, if you reenacted, not that that's how you want to go viral, but hey, someone has to start somewhere.
Can you believe I didn't actually have TikTok until this year? I would say I'm pretty up to date with pop culture, with things that are popular, but I was still, until months ago, showing people hey, did you see this reel? And finally my boss at work was like, yeah, that was funny on TikTok a month ago. And I decided, okay, Kennedy, it's 2023, just get on TikTok already.
Okay, I was kind of a late bloomer too to TikTok, but I got in December 2021, but I honestly think that was for my health because I spend way too much time on it, and if I had done it any earlier, I wouldn't have been productive in things. So I'm so glad to be here now, and I'm way too into it. But I was also a late bloomer to TikTok.
I think I was like you. I was so afraid it would consume all my time that I was so hesitant to get on it. But even now, I feel like I have good, healthy limits. I'll watch one if you send it to me. I'll get on Book Talk, get some info about different books. But as far as spending a lot of time on it, I really haven't made very many, haven't really gone a lot. So I would say I'm not looking to go TikTok famous anytime soon, but if so, maybe King Curtis 2.0.
Maybe it's King Curtis. I need better discipline with mine. I've had to twice give up TikTok during a fast because I can actually get to that place for hours on it that TikTok starts sending you their own videos that say, "Are you scrolling instead of sleeping again? Or maybe you should pause and get outside. Maybe get a snack." It shames you into the fact you've been there for too long. So I need to learn from you in that because I am on it for far too long.
I love it. I've never gotten that notification. So I didn't even know that notification exists. So that's
the
really
thing
reassuring.
Most people don't. So I've hit just a certain level of fandom that most people don't achieve, which I should not be proud of because then I get off of it and I'm like, what did I even just learn? And the answer is nothing, but I was entertained.
Which is good. I do feel like it's funny. You can learn a lot from TikTok. But yeah, maybe a good healthy limit there.
Yeah. That's this is important to call out. Okay, so the beauty of this podcast is I feel like when I was first starting, I was like, Kennedy feels like a great person to have on. Specifically, the subject in mind I had was you moved from Tennessee to Florida a little over a year and a half ago.
Yeah, I moved at the very end of July 31st. So it's been a year and some change. Feels like it's been longer, but it also
Yeah.
feels like I just got here kind of at the same time.
Yeah. And I feel like initially the subject I was thinking was you've done such a good job of moving and kind of jumping into a new place and feeling like, okay, it's home and I'm going to stay. Um, but as we were like, we've been hanging out as friends a lot more, our roommates, we've been hanging out a lot more. And as I was prepping and preparing, you were like, yeah, what are we going to talk about? And as I'm sitting here, I'm like preparing, I was thinking, I like, how many siblings does Kennedy have? And, like, where did she get the idea to even move to Jacksonville? And there were so many pieces that I didn't know. So, we made the executive decision, let's get brunch first and jump in and, like, actually talk about life. But I think that's one of the gifts that you bring is you jump in so wholeheartedly that I feel like even though we've known each other, like, pretty quickly after you moved here, I feel like we met probably in September after you moved here. Even in the ins and outs of spending a lot of time together, I feel like we're good friends. Like, you're just good at jumping in with people. And one of the things we jump in on a lot is talking about singleness in this day and age, which is brutal.
Brutal is a good word for it, I would say.
Yeah.
It's a struggle.
It's a struggle. And I feel like we laugh and joke about it, but we're also kind of like, hello, is this gonna change anytime soon?
Hey God, do you hear us? We are looking for good, handsome men.
Yes. And if you know anybody, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, age like 25, 32, I don't know. I don't know what age range you're looking for, but I'm somewhere in that range.
Yeah, no, I like that range. Everyone says I should go higher because, they're like, "Even though you're 28, it feels like you need someone in, like, 10 years older than you," and I'm like, "That feels extreme."
10 years does feel extreme. I think in 10 years I'm gonna be a lot different.
Yes.
I don't know, I think 5 years might be my limit, but
Yeah.
who knows? You can't put the guy in a box. So
You
Lord,
can't,
I'll
you
take
can't.
whoever.
Listen, that's where we are, yeah. No. I feel like my range would be, like, 26 maybe to 35?
I feel like that's a good range.
Yeah.
Yeah. How old are you now?
I'm 28.
28. So I'm 26. So I feel like my range may be a little lower, but
Yeah.
for sure. I'm someone that's not like I'm willing to go a couple years younger, but I don't want to go too young either because I acknowledge how much I've changed in the last couple years, and
Yes.
even just 2 years I feel like makes such a difference.
Agreed. I think the number doesn't matter, it's more the maturity. And I think the couple years younger, why you're willing to consider almost is like I mean, if their maturity is there, like, the number necessarily doesn't matter, but oftentimes I feel like the maturity does coincide with the age. Only because I know it from my own experience, like, even who I was 2 years ago
Absolutely.
is not the same person I am now.
For sure. I feel like just like graduating college, entering young adult life, like, yes, I can still relate. Like, I have tons of friends that are a couple years younger than me, still closely connected to girls that are like finishing out college. And it's not like I can't relate and still share a lot of the same struggles. But I feel like even just that first year post grad, like, just changes you so much. And like, I don't know, I just think my whole mindset is different. Like, things I care about, things that upset me, like, things that used to upset me when I was 23, 24, like, absolutely do not matter to me at all anymore. So just think, so, like, I'm not saying I'm just so wise and so grown now,
No.
but I do feel like I'm now 4 years post grad, which is literally wild that I've been out of school as long as I was in it. But I feel like these 4 years have really just changed me so much and just like, I don't know, helped me grow so much. So to think about like dating and even like the things I would care about like in a relationship have changed so much just since graduating college.
I think that's so true. Actually, I think the point you said about what used to matter so much doesn't anymore, or the things that used to bother you especially. I think that is such a different, um, kind of gauge to look at maturity because I think there are things that the things that were important are still important in different ways. right? Like, they almost, like, change shade. It's the same color, it's just a different shade. But I think the things that used to bother you that don't anymore, you grow up and kind of realize things are less important, or perspective is just so much wider, like, it's not as zeroed in, and I feel like that's such a sign of maturity. Yeah, wow. I so agree with you on that. Um, okay, so the beauty, like I said, is I did some of the prep of what we were gonna talk about before, but I feel like our brunch was like, "Oh, so we'll just talk for another 3 hours on all the subjects."
We had a pre-podcast, actually. We didn't record it, though, so sorry, everyone.
Sometimes I think about that and I'm like, "Man, I wish I just had a microphone right here because it would be so much easier to not, like, set up everyone's schedules," but even, like, funny stuff, like, is there stuff you sit with Kayla and you're just like, "That could have been a podcast?"
Absolutely. I feel like all the time I'm like, man, that was such a good one. Like, who's recording this? Even when I'm like sitting with my friends, I feel like I have a very, very funny group of friends, and sometimes I'm like, we could seriously go viral right now. Like, why are we recording?
This is why you and I make so much sense and match each other's energy levels because all the time I'm like, "Ugh, that was our moment. That's when I could have started my, like, making TikToks of my makeup and make money because I went viral over that conversation that just happened."
Maybe what we can start doing is recording ourselves while we're playing pickleball. We'll like talk about dating struggles while playing. Like, I feel like there's a niche
Genius.
for that for sure.
Genius. The thing is, your first pickleball session was last week or this previous week on Wednesday, and I feel like you're gonna come back and show up and show out for all of us. Like, I think you're gonna have the trick shots and stuff down, like, by the time we get back.
I will say, as soon as I left, I was already like, when can I go play again? And it's crazy because pickleball is another thing that I feel like I'm coming to a little bit later than everyone else because I
Yeah.
had an injury, had surgery last year, like,
Mhm.
had been itching, absolutely itching to play for months. So to finally, like, find two people that could play with me and my roommate, like, has been amazing. And it's just going to be so fun. Like, I love any kind of exercise where I cannot think about the fact that I'm exercising.
Agreed.
And it is
1000%.
lighthearted because like we could giggle, we can talk, like it's just fun. We were probably annoying all the people playing next to us, but I just love that we were laughing so much while playing.
The thing is there was that one group that was so serious and knew all the languages, not languages, like the cues that you're supposed to say even when their ball came over to our court, whatnot, and we're like, "Y'all, we're just here to have fun. We're here to giggle." But
Literally.
but you and I were competitive though. We were like, "No, no, no," because we lost that first game pretty badly. But we came back.
Hey, we came back to get the win. And one thing about me is that I'm so competitive. It's funny because I'm one of the most competitive people unless I know I'm really bad at something, then I just act like I don't care.
Same. Same, same. I'm like, no, couldn't be me." Like, don't like that, can't relate." But the second I have any talent towards it, I'm like, "No, I will be the best, bow down."
Yeah, no, I'm literally the same. Like, gotta be good. I don't know. I feel like when I was younger, that was definitely a very unhealthy quality in me of like, I
Same.
have to be the best. I have to show up everyone. And now I'm truly like, I would rather like just be a good teammate and have a good attitude than win. And like, I'm so competitive, but the second people start getting like frustrated or mad, I'm like, okay, like we don't have to play anymore. It's fine. Like, that's why I just love that we can laugh and giggle
Yes.
and like I'm gonna be competitive, and I would love to be Kelsey and Kayla every single time. Sorry, ladies, but at the same time, like I just love that we can like laugh and giggle about it.
Same here. And honestly, if that is not the definition of sanctification, because I was the same in that I need to be the best, I need to be in the spotlight, I need to, and now I'm so much more about how do I invite everybody into it and how can we enjoy it together? And it's much more about the enjoyment of whatever we're doing rather than conquering whatever we're doing. Not that I'm not still competitive, but it's been transformed in a way that I care way more about the people in it and not just myself in the situation.
Yeah, no, I can totally relate, and I just feel like I can just see that same theme in like every area of my life of like wanted to perform, wanted to succeed, wanted to do so well or like be the spotlight. And it's actually funny because thinking back, I'm like, I never have been the best. I never have been the smartest or the prettiest like in a friend group. But at the same time, it's like there's so much more about just like being with people and connecting and like having a good experience than like winning or being on top or like just being the star of the show.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when you part of the struggle when you think you need to be the best or whatnot is because you think that that is what's going to give you identity or a place. And then when you realize more than anything else what deep down we're desiring is to be connected, you can kind of loosen the grip on once I have these definitions of myself as the prettiest, the smartest, or whatever that looks like, that's actually how you relate to people, is everyone being like, "Oh, we don't fall under any of those categories," because who could? Do you know what I mean?
For sure. And I think something that's been so beautiful about like being in the 20s and figuring it out, and especially like becoming friends with you and just other people in Jacksonville, like in my same kind of season of life. Like you're a couple years older, but I
Yeah.
feel like we're kind of in the same season of
Definitely.
like trying to figure out a career, like wanting to date, wanting to marry. But I feel like there's been such like a pressure release of like none of us have it all figured out, and
No.
we're all just
Yeah.
like taking it day by day. And I think there's so much beauty, and especially like in this season of life, I know we've talked about this a little bit, like with friends that are maybe like already married or having kids, it would be so easy to compare, like
Yeah.
wish that I was there. But I think it's just been so cool just to like sit back and like realize like we're all figuring it out, we're all going at a different pace, but like there's so much beauty in the journey. And like you said, it's just all about like being connected and finding community. And I think that's been my favorite part of being in my 20s, is just like just getting to know people and getting to build relationships. And like you said, like I've moved, I've kind of been in a lot of different places, but I feel like I've really just learned the value of community and like making connections and friendships no matter where I am.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the qualities of you that I picked up on so quickly is you have a lot of friends, like a lot of friends, and I think there's something so beautiful to that that we can learn from of how do you keep those friends. But why do you feel like you have a lot of friends? Why do you feel like that's important to stay connected?
Yeah, I mean, I would say definitely like the amount of close friendships I have was something that wasn't intentional at the time, but I was really blessed to go to private Christian school for college. I went to Lee University, and how I ended up there was totally a God thing because I did not want to go at all. Thought I was going to go to the University of Tennessee. Even into my senior year, I was like so committed to going, like wanted to be involved. And then a friend from high school just convinced me to go visit Lee. She was going to tour and needed someone to come with her because her parents couldn't go. And I was there for 10 minutes and knew the Lord wanted me to be there. And I would equate like so many of my closest friendships. When I think about the 10 women that I'm the closest to in my life, every single one of them came from my time at Lee.
Wow.
And I feel like they're friendships that pretty much all started, I would say, like early on in my college career. And I have like half the group is a couple years older and half their group is my age. And it's been so cool to just have those friendships and to see them get married, see them move to different places as well, have kids. And I feel like when I was kind of thinking about this podcast and kind of like, I know you'd talked or asked me a couple questions kind of about friendship and why it matters to me. And I was just thinking like, man, how did I get so close to these friends? And I think so much of my college experience, like going to a Christian school, we started class with prayer and devotion. I was a part of like a Christian sorority, and I was a part of a college ministry. I just feel like I was in so many places and like had so many moments of like being vulnerable and just times of prayer and worship. And I feel like so early on in my college career, I just like had these special and unique moments with each of those friends where we were able to share our burden, share like the deepest parts of our hearts. I really feel like so much of it was through just shared experience, like being young in college, navigating heartbreak, navigating like trying to figure things out, hustle culture. Like I feel like all of us in some degree like wanted to be successful in college, wanted to be known. And I just feel like so many of those important relationships in my life and my friends now like just came from like that season of just trying to figure it out in college. And I feel like it really is crazy, like even now having like moved to a different state right after college. I lived in Orlando for 6 months, lived overseas for 6 months, came back to Tennessee, moved to Florida, and I would say I still talk to all of those girls almost every single day. And I may not know exactly every single in and out of their day, but I feel like it's rare that a day goes by that we're not sending each other prayer requests or asking how each other is doing. And I think that's one way it's been easy to keep up with those friends, is just continuously asking like, hey, how are you doing? But also sharing those like deep places and being willing to be vulnerable, even if we're living states away. Like I think it's just been so cool to just keep those friendships and continue to grow them even from afar.
Yeah. I think there is something so profound about vulnerability within friendships that is the connection point, and, there's obviously caveats to that, right? So, like, safe people and people who are kind of in the same place, not same places, and you can't be in different stages of life, but more so willing to be that vulnerable back and forth. I think one of the things my counselor always said is like, when you share something vulnerable, if you and a friend are at the same level and one friend shares something, they go deeper and lower. And when the other person shares something, they also go deeper and lower to meet you at that level. And that's really where friendship grows, rather than if someone is not willing to match that level of sharing or opening up about their own struggles, even if they're not matching necessarily, that's where friendships grow and friendships thrive. And I think there is something unique to not just being in a place of I think what you're saying is so unique about your experience is it was in such a safe place where you knew you were pursuing the same thing so you could be at the same level of vulnerability constantly. So what you're still sharing now is there's joys in this is what I ate for breakfast, of course, but, like, what keeps you connected is you're invested beyond just activity or job preference or stage of life. It's like, no, we're sharing the hard things, and we need each other to almost stay afloat.
For sure. And yeah, even thinking about that, like, I think, like, I grew up in a very small town, had the same friends my entire life. And I remember just all through high school, like, so much of my identity I feel like I found in, like, again, like, performance and, like, wanting to be the best, wanting to excel and, like, make my family proud. And I feel like I had the same friends from, like, birth through 12th grade. And I'm not nearly as close to any of my high school friends, but I remember a time like we'd all decided kind of where we were going to college. And I remember a time my senior year sitting in my backyard where for the first time I felt like I actually shared like deep hard struggles with my friends, like the people that I
Mm.
would have said like we're Christians, we know the Lord, but like I was never willing to be vulnerable and go like all in with those friends that I'd literally known my entire life. And I feel like that part of the reason those friendships didn't really carry on into college is because like we just didn't have that basis of like we've gone deep and we've done the
Yeah.
nitty gritty with each other. And I feel like when I think back to my college friendships, it was like we went into the nitty gritty first and then figured out the details later. And even now, like moving to Jacksonville, kind of like you said, like I know how much my friends in Tennessee have meant to me and how much community has just carried me through every season of life. And even after like living abroad and kind of learning some lessons with friendship there, like I knew when I moved to Jacksonville, like I want to find friends that are also like minded and are pursuing the Lord as well, because
Yeah.
it's so easy to make surface level friends, and I have tons of friends in Jacksonville that like do not pursue the Lord wholeheartedly, but I knew like I needed to find a core group of people. And so I'm so grateful I met you and
Oh,
Kelsey
yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's so many other like just sweet like-minded believers, because I feel like those are the friendships that will transcend like all these worldly things.
Yeah. I think there's, because I also wanna back up just to talk about, like, how you found the Lord or why you committed your life to following Jesus. But I think there is something to I have so many friends that don't all believe what I believe, right? Like, they're not the people that are absolutely sharing every single experience or have the same, I don't know, beliefs, thoughts, feelings on everything. And there is such a beauty to learning from each other and accepting and loving and being in those positions. But there is this place that biblically God called us to a community and to be around like minded people who are serving and pursuing who He is, learning Him more. And I think there is this really beautiful thing that when you are willing to go there with someone and you are chasing after the same thing, it it creates a bond that's beyond just what we're capable of humanly. Because I know I still fail my friends all the time, right? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
know I don't show up every time I should, or I'm not as honest as I need to be, or all of those things that we're just people and we fail people. But there is a beauty to having like-minded friends who are pursuing something so strong that makes you a better person and also teaches you how to be a better friend.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that for sure. And I feel like yeah, that's just rang true in like every part of my life of just like meeting people. And even like you said, like it is cool too to have friends that like don't think the exact same way as you. And I feel like that's also stretched me so much because I feel like growing up in a small town, like I would say I lived in somewhat of like a safe like
Mm,
space. Like I lived in the middle of the Bible Belt in Tennessee. Like everyone would say they're a Christian.
yeah.
Even going to a Christian university, like I mean, yes, there were struggles and it was not always easy to follow Jesus. Like not everyone that went to Lee was a Christian either.
Right.
But I do feel like that just like shaped me and built me up so much so that when I did go into the real world, it was like it to me it was a little bit of a culture shock at first. Like I knew that not everyone thought the same as me, but at the same time it's like I never really experienced that to such a degree until leaving college. And especially I went to work for Disney right after college, which we can talk about that in depth if we want to. But I feel like that was such a 180 of I was with the most holy people I'd ever met to I'm in Disney with people that do not care about the Lord whatsoever. But I feel like even in that time, like it was so cool to get to know people that didn't think the same way as me. But equally, it was so important to continue to have friendships that were encouraging me on the back end of
Yeah.
like, hey, like here's who you are. Don't forget it. Like let's continue to pursue holiness even when it's not easy. And I feel like I'm just still so grateful for those friendships and like being able to find community like Christian community even in places that weren't as easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so to like bounce back for a second, why Jesus? How did you become a believer?
Yeah, so I feel like we were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier at brunch, but I feel like I can't really remember a time in my life where I didn't know who Jesus was, and I'm so grateful. I feel like
Yeah.
when I first like was starting to get a little bit older in high school and even early college, and people were like, "What's your testimony? What's your story?" I almost used to like devalue my story a lot because I didn't
Mm.
have this like I was lost and Jesus saved me. Like, yes, that is my story. I feel like no matter where you come from or how much you knew the Lord growing up, like there's a point where you have to make your faith real for yourself.
Right.
And I feel like growing up in church, like I always had a lot of good like elders to look up to. And my grandma was someone who she's passed now, but like just loved the Lord so deeply. So I always had such good people to show me what faith looked like. But I feel like it was the summer between ninth and 10th grade year I was very involved with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And I
Yeah.
remember going to summer camp for the first time, and all the camp counselors are college students. And I just remember for the first time, like truly seeing like college students on fire for the Lord and like showing me what it looked like, not just to say you go to church or do all these Christian things, but to truly just desire the Lord wholeheartedly. And I feel like it was that summer, like I don't know if you've ever seen like cardboard testimony where people have like
Yeah.
I was this on one side and on the back. And I just remember there was kind of like this skit in this kind of like chapel service, and I will never forget it. People were just kind of holding up like different words the Lord had spoken over them, and I remember someone holding up one that said "fought for," and I remember just breaking down, thinking like, man,
Wow.
like the Lord is fighting for me. And I feel like Exodus 14:14 says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." I feel like that was just such a turning point for me to
Yeah.
know that like no matter what I do or how much I've messed up or how much I feel like I've disappointed the Lord, like he has already fought for me. He's continuing to fight for me, and like the battle's already won. And I just feel like that was really the first time in my life that I truly decided to like say yes to the Lord with all of me. And I feel like obviously like high school's a struggle, and kind of navigating that through college, like there were definitely some struggles, but I feel like that kind of catapulted my relationship with the Lord and just kind of carried with me throughout that time.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I feel like we talked about this a little bit, but there is a difference in feeling like your story is maybe not one that feels like a dramatic, I was this and now I'm like a follower of Jesus and it's transformed me completely. But the other truth of it is it's lost and found. Like technically everyone's story really is that, even when there's not this like dramatic crescendo of extreme behavioral changes, but just to know like I'm in a place where he does fight for me or he did die for me or I don't know, just that I'm saved because of what he did for me. That is so beyond what I could have done for myself. Yeah, so why do you feel like so in that, you chose to go to Lee and you chose to continue to follow the Lord, to lean into friendships that brought you that way. So talk about your transition into wanting to go into YWAM.
Yes, so YWAM, if you don't know, YWAM stands for Youth with a Mission, and it is just for really anyone like 18 to 30, I would say. I don't know the exact age range, but definitely like young adult, just out of high school. Around that same time, in about 10th grade, I really just discovered like a heart for missions, and had gone on a couple like short-term mission trips, but really thought like, okay, at some point, like, I'm going to do missions. I'm going to do something big for the Lord. And I just remember like looking on Google and found the world race and found YWAM, and I immediately was like, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to go somewhere crazy, do something wild for the Lord. And kind of always thought I would do it maybe this summer, like after graduating high school, but then thought, oh, if I go do it, like maybe I won't end up going to college. So, but in hindsight, I'm so grateful that I waited till I was done with college, because one, at Lee, I met so many other people that had either done a discipleship training school with YWAM or were also going to do it. And I feel like if it wasn't for me waiting, I don't know where I would have ended up. And it was actually, I was going to go to Amsterdam to do it, and then last minute changed my mind to Switzerland, because the dean of students at Lee, we had gotten really close. His name was Mr. McClung. Him and his wife are just like such precious people and so well into college students. And I was just having lunch one day asking like, hey, how did you meet your wife? Tell me about it. And he mentioned YWAM, and turns out his brother helped start discipleship training school. Every book I read in YWAM like mentioned Floyd McClung, which was cool. So it was just so crazy to see the Lord's hand in all of that. And like me ending up in Lausanne, Switzerland, like none of that would have happened if I would have waited till after college. But I felt like even though I went to a Christian university, felt like I really got a lot of like just good foundational knowledge on the Lord and the Bible. Like through college, I knew YWAM was 6 months of my life where my only obligation was to get to know the Lord more. And I knew that I wanted to dedicate that time to the Lord, especially after finishing college. And I think I kind of told you this earlier. I kind of think in the back of my mind, I would have never like said this, but I kind of thought like, okay, when I go to YWAM and when I learn more about the Bible, like eventually I'm just going to arrive there. Like wherever there was, I just kind of thought like, man, at some point I'm just going to reach this level of spiritual maturity. And I feel like YWAM was totally just a stripping of all of that of like, hey, you know a lot of good foundational things about the Lord, but like I'm going to show you more parts of my heart that you didn't even know. And like so much just stripping away like the try hard, like stripping away the performance and truly just like getting to know his heart and his character. So I did that January of 2020 to June of 2020, which was a wild time to do it.
A wild time to do anything. So how did that change your experience with YWAM?
Yes, so it definitely changed things quite a bit. So again, if you're unfamiliar with YWAM, no matter where you go in the world to do it, you can go to Kona, you can go to New Zealand, like there's several bases around the US, but everyone starts with 12 weeks of lecture phase. So it's kind of like school, like every week was a different topic. We were in the classroom in the mornings. In the afternoon we would do practical ministry, so kind of like our way of serving around the base. And then we would also do like intercession and prayer. Wednesdays we would go out in the city and evangelize, but every week was kind of a different topic, like what is discipleship, character, nature of God, Holy Spirit, like all these topics again that I feel like I knew a lot about, but it was so much more like, I don't know, just rediscovering God's heart, which was beautiful. But
that, and it's in a separate location from real life. So you're so in depth, and that's what you're filled with constantly.
absolutely, like it was seriously the most like intimate of settings. And I will say it was so beautiful because it really like we all got so vulnerable so fast, and it was like there was nowhere to go to hide. Like living in such tight community, I share a room with 5 people. You have a mentor that you meet with weekly. You have staff members like constantly knowing everything you're up to, and it like seems so like uptight at first, but really it was just such a safe place to one just like lay everything at the Lord's feet, but also just have such accountability around you and people that truly are so in tune with the Holy Spirit, and we're able to call out not only things that maybe you could be doing better, but call out the good things too, like things I didn't see in myself. And I think some of that I'm still unraveling, and I was always really good to like if someone spoke something over me through prayer, like really writing it down. And there's even things now that I look back, it's been almost 4 years since I've done it, and it's been so cool even now to look back at that and see how the Lord's like still bringing those things to fruition.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you do lecture phase for those 12 weeks, and then you're supposed to go and do outreach for 3 months. So my group, there was 30 of us doing school, and 10 of it was 3 groups of 10. One group was going to go to Brazil, one was going to go to Egypt, and my group was supposed to backpack to Europe, 11 countries, kind of partner with some different YWAM bases. But then COVID happened 2 weeks before we were supposed to go, which was so
Brutal.
wild.
Yeah.
Literally so wild. And kind of like I was telling you earlier, in that very first week of discipleship training school, I remember my school leader, Jordan, saying, YWAM and DTS is a lot like being in the wilderness. And that could not have been further from the truth, especially with COVID. It's something like we've never navigated in our lifetime, like the whole world shutting down, like something so unknown. And I feel like we related that a lot to the Israelites, like having to leave everything they were comfortable with, and like being in the wilderness, and how the wilderness is a place where you, like, your only option is to be dependent on the Lord, and to have that intimacy, and that really through those first few weeks of COVID, we're kind of trying to decide, like, do we stay here? Do you send us all home? Like, we can't do outreach, but like, how do we make the most of this season? And I feel like it was the perfect place for me to be during that time. Because when everyone was quarantining, like, home alone, I was quarantining with 100 other people in my building.
Yeah.
And all we did was read the Bible and pray, and like really talk about the Lord deeply, which was amazing. And it was around that same time, like, we were studying the book of Exodus. We decided we would do a 5-week Bible study and really just dig deep into the Bible. And I just remember us reading the book of Exodus saying, like, man, like, what Jordan spoke that first week of YWAM is so true for us right now. Like, we truly have left Egypt, entered the wilderness, and like the only thing we can do is be dependent on the Lord. So it was just so cool to see how the Lord was truly in all of that, even if it looked so different than the way it was supposed to.
Yeah. Isn't that true of life? Yeah. I feel like that's one of the beauties of something the Lord has been showing me a lot recently is the wilderness feels like the absolute last place you want to go because it feels unsafe. It feels like something to be afraid of that you don't know what's coming next or what could be around the corner. It feels dark. But really, that is where the dependence grows that much deeper and it connects to the heart of what we really want is to be fully dependent on Him. And it's only in the darkness and the wilderness that we learn to cling completely to Him and to be filled with who He really is.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that concept is so foreign to those who don't know the Lord because it feels like, why would the dark, hard seasons be what you kind of crave? And we don't. Like, currently, I'm still like, okay, Lord, I think I'm done with the wilderness for a minute. But that is how He speaks and works and gets to the real core of what it is we desire so deeply. Yeah.
No, I agree for sure, and I feel like you said, it really just causes us to be dependent on the Lord. And I feel like I'm someone that I don't like the uncomfortableness. I don't like to be going through hardships. I feel like I'm someone that wants to just like hurry up and get through the bad stuff.
Yeah.
But when I truly look back at every place in my life that I would consider like a wilderness season or hard moments, like, man, but I can see how the Lord's hand was in all of that.
Yeah.
And I'm so like pro, like, journal, write down things that are hard, write down the things that you're struggling with, because it's so cool to look back and see how the Lord like redeemed those moments or like brought you through hard things. So it's so beautiful.
Right, because it's so much about the actual journey itself. Like, there's the phrase that I feel like we still use, but it was such a big 90s thing, I feel like, to call it a walk with the Lord and or your journey with the Lord or your relationship with the Lord, and I feel like we've lost that a little bit of the walk is truly to be step in step with what He has for the pathway of our own lives, you know? And it's always calling us closer in relationship with Him, deeper into knowing who He is, and that's what any relationship is, right? Like, it doesn't stay stagnant, it moves in some direction, and I feel like it's in those dark nights of the soul or what is happening here or the questioning or just the hard, like the suffering, the sadness, that is where you lean into people you're in relationship with so desperately. And He does that even for us. Like, how do you lean in? How do you grow closer? And you're right, tracing it back and seeing His faithfulness is the way that relationship, it's kind of like what we talked about in vulnerability. It's writing down the deepest, darkest, hardest, sharing us with Him. You go back later and recognize, oh, He was just as faithful to me in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where our relationship grows.
And I feel like even thinking through what you're saying of like sharing and like walking through those hard moments, I think that comes straight back to community of like, I feel like there's nothing more like refreshing than hearing someone say me too. And I think that's been another part of my story, that like I'm someone that I feel like I'm pretty quick to be vulnerable. I'm kind of an open book, like not willing to like hide everything. Like I'm someone that if someone needs to be vulnerable, I'm usually the first one that will share. And I feel like that's something that's been so beautiful. Even finding community here in Jacksonville or walking through friendships is like being able to share hard moments with other people, and just like finding that freedom just in knowing that other people have walked it as well and been able to experience those same things. And I don't know, there's just seriously nothing more refreshing than hearing that other people have also walked through that and have been vulnerable. And yeah, I think that just even more so confirms like how important community is and why I value my friendships and community so much, because I know I can't do it alone, and ultimately it's the Lord that's going to carry us through those struggles. But I think he equally gave us friendships to encourage us and help us to walk through those hard moments too.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think because the lonelier you feel, um, the louder the voices in your own head. And it's so much more comforting to hear someone else look at you. Like you said, even in those moments of we need to get real for a second and this is where it's not okay, or encouragement. The more you stay in your own head and in isolation, that's where the enemy really gets us, or that's when we stay in traps, sometimes of our own making. And having people aside you to say, nope, this is not reality, or this feels hard right now, but I see this in you. Like that can be the most life-giving thing. It's literally like a lifesaver, like one of those little all I can think is a lifesaver candy, but like when someone's drowning and they throw the tube thing, that's what it is, like rising yourself out of the wave. But I feel like that's also it is risky, right? It is still risky to be that vulnerable and share with people, especially in your darkest and hard. How do you feel like the risk and reward is compared when, like, moving to a whole new city and just entering in with people? Because I mean, I feel like you moved here not necessarily knowing that you were gonna stay.
Yeah, and it's like it's one of those things for me where, kind of like I said previously, I grew up in a small town, kind of stayed, like, even college was only about an hour from where I grew up. But I feel like every season of my life that I've, like, moved to a new place or been forced to find new community, I just have seen, like, such beauty in it. And I feel like I'm someone that's willing to, like, take a risk. And I think part of me, like, being willing to take a risk is also knowing, like, not putting too much pressure on it. Like, if this doesn't work out, like, I can just go back, you know? And I think so many people, like, let, I don't know, like, a little fear like that keep them from doing something. And I feel like with really anything, like, me working at Disney, like, that wasn't that risky. But, like, me moving to Orlando, me moving to Switzerland, me moving here, like, in every season, like, even the littlest of fears that I had, I feel like the Lord just, like, blessed me even more of, like, just, I don't know, like, just being willing to step out. And I can see how he was faithful in every single part of it. Like, he was faithful to bring friends. He was faithful to bring positive Christian community. So I feel like when I was looking at moving to Jacksonville, really with no end date, like, I feel like with Disney, I knew that it was 6 months. With YWAM, I knew that it was 6 months. But I feel like because I'd seen the Lord's faithfulness in those, it gave me such peace in moving to Jacksonville and not really having an end date. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like when I was thinking about moving, I just always had kind of wanted to do something while I was still young and single and kind of could just take some risk. And I feel like, once again, the Lord has been so faithful to just give me, like, beautiful friendships here and been able to just get connected to a book club and get connected through just so many different avenues. So I feel like even though it was scary, even though there was so much risk in it, I feel like at the end of the day, like, I just never really put that much pressure on the situation. It was like, hey, if you do this and it doesn't work out, like, you have plenty of people back in Tennessee that will gladly take you back. So, and I know not everyone has that, and that can be discouraging to not have maybe family that's supportive or a group of friends in another state. But I'm so pro, like, just do it, like, take the risk, because I feel like there's so much beauty in the unknown and so much, I don't know, just, like, so much freedom and just, like, taking chances.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like even first meeting you, I feel like it was, again, in September, so not that long after you moved here. You had such an enthusiasm already about just this place, and I feel like walking into something new, like you said, with less pressure and more enthusiasm rather than fear or what have I done and questioning, changes your mindset to approach anything and everything. As someone moves though, like what would be some of your just like practical advice to jump in, get involved, or like just start meeting new people?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it's definitely hard, and it helped that I was working for the company I work for now in Jacksonville, was working for them remotely, so it helped that I knew a handful of people. But even thinking about my roommate Kayla, like I did not know Kayla at all. We
Yeah.
did not talk on the phone one time. Like I just genuinely, we found each other through Facebook. I said what I was looking for. She said what she was looking for kind of in a roommate, and it just felt right. And I feel like even before I moved here, I just prayed a lot about really just inviting the Lord into it, and like
Yeah.
trusting that like his hand was in it. And even if, I mean, Kayla is the perfect roommate. Like,
Yeah, she's amazing.
Literally couldn't have gone better for someone I
Yeah.
didn't know. But I just feel like I really invited the Lord into that process, and I feel like that made just a world of difference of just like having such peace before I even came here. Not that that eliminated any fear, but I feel like also as soon as I got here, I knew like, okay, you don't have to start serving at a church immediately, but you need to go to one. Like,
Yeah.
even if you're looking around, and I mean, I've been here a little over a year now, and I feel like I just kind of landed on a church in the summer that I want to be a part of and serve at and go to a small
Right.
group. But I just knew, and I kind of felt this way even when I moved to Orlando the first time, like working for Disney. I was at a church that next Sunday. Like I just know the importance
Yeah.
of just like being in community with believers. And again, it helps that I'm a social person, and
Yeah.
I'm definitely
Right.
not shy by any means, but I feel like I'm just always willing to seek out community. And I feel like it's easy to walk into a church, walk into a group, and leave without ever talking to anyone. But I just feel like I always have made it a priority to just get connected, whether that is through a church community. Maybe you don't even follow Jesus. Like another avenue of really found community is through fitness, and I'm dealing with injury now, so it's looked a little different. But even going to Orange Theory, like it's just so cool when you start committing to going to a place like regularly. Like you find community, and I
Yeah.
would see the same people in the class and be able to say hello to them. Or even being a part of book club, like I just felt like I found so many avenues and just hobbies in Jacksonville that have made it really, really easy to get to know people. And I feel like even my friendship with you was through another friend.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
I feel like the people I'm closest to now, a year later, are people I met through other acquaintances.
Yeah.
So I feel like you have to be willing to put yourself out there and get plugged in. Like, I don't think it's always going to come to you without you
Yeah.
having to seek it out too.
I do think what you said is really cool. Two things. Number one, it's like find the things that you love, pursue the things that you love where there's other people who love what you love. Like that's just a great place, like practically start looking for the things that you love and people around you who love doing it too. But I also think what's so cool is the way that you felt like you really committed to Christ was seeing that he fought for you. And it's so cool that the prayers you have, you're just expecting that now, right? Like I'm inviting him into it because I know he's going to be the one that does the fighting for me. So he'll fight to find the friends that I need. He'll fight to find the community I need, the place I need, the roommate I need. I just love that. That's so cool. Okay, so talking about injury, that was unexpected. And I feel like that was during the time where we would like pass each other and see each other, but I didn't know the in depth of how it happened. And then all of a sudden you were on a scooter for a long time.
Yes, the scooter phase. So, kind of talking again about like getting connected, I feel like especially post grad, I did the college thing, did the Disney thing, did the YWAM thing. Then I settled into my young adult life, and like through my first job, I needed to find hobbies. And I worked for the university that I went to, which was a great first job, but at the same time, like it was hard because I wanted other community that weren't just people still in college.
Right.
So I feel like I really, really found community through fitness and running, and got rid of my freshman 15 that I gained years before, but really just like found so much community in running and being active. And I've always been someone that played sports and was very involved, and I feel like I needed hobbies in my young adult life. So helped start a running club in Tennessee, and like it was just so beautiful because I feel like I'm someone that also always wants to be getting better at something, whether that was playing softball growing up and then volleyball, and in college I always had like intramurals or something that I was like working towards. So I feel like for me it was running, and I feel like I really got to where not only was it a way for me to get to spend time with others, but it was also a time for me to get to know, like spend time with the Lord. And I would listen to worship music a lot while I was running, or even just going for a walk. It was such a good way for me to not only recharge like physically, but also spiritually and mentally.
Yeah.
So me getting hurt, I feel like I first got hurt. I kind of dealt with some knee problems in college, worked through that. When I started running about three and a half years ago, I was good for maybe about a year. And then about 2 years ago, so I guess it was like September of 2021, I started feeling some pain in my hip right before I was getting ready to like run a half marathon. I've ran a couple of them, but this one I was like, okay, I'm going to run it fast. I'm going to run it well. And started experiencing some pain. Went to a doctor, found out I had some fraying on my labrum. So I totally took 3 months off of working out altogether, which was already just such a bummer because, like I said, like so many of my friends, I was going to Orange Theory, I was going to running group, like so much of my community I was finding through those outlets. So kind of took some time off. Then right before moving here, I was kind of rehabbing, getting better. Moved here. When I moved here, I was like, I'm going all in, back to running, back to fitness. I'm going to go to all these workout classes, and hurt my foot. Same side. Now I've had a bad knee. I've had a bad hip. Now I have a bad foot. Kind of took some time off. Turns out I have a torn ligament in my foot. Had to have surgery. And that was just like 6 months after me moving here, which was also a bummer because I felt like it like trapped me in my apartment. I had to stay home a lot. I was on a scooter. Couldn't do all the things I wanted to do. But at the same time, it was like, I feel like a good kind of like a pause and reflection time of like, okay, you've been here 6 months. You're kind of being forced the rest now. You're kind of being forced to be in the wilderness again, depending on the Lord. But I feel like it was, when I think back on it now, like I was going, trying to get involved, trying to do all these things. But I do feel like, especially like all December, January, February, it really was a good like time to pause and not only once spend time with my roommate, and me and Kayla, I feel like got so much closer during that time, but also kind of gave me the opportunity to reevaluate like, okay, like one, where are you putting your trust like when things aren't going your way? And I think that's something like, now that I've like had surgery on my foot, and now I've just found out I need surgery on my hip, so it's like still like, okay, Lord, like what are you doing through this time? Like, again, where am I putting my trust when it feels like I just can't catch a break physically? But I feel like, especially at the beginning of the year when I was having to like pause and reflect and not be as active, it was helping me like just slow down and spend time with him. Because again, I feel like I'm someone that really dives in fully, but at the same time, like I'm not always good at resetting and reflecting and resting. And I know we were talking a lot about John Mark Comer and like his practices, but I feel like it was such a needed time just to kind of like, I don't know, just collect myself and kind of figure out where I was emotionally, physically, spiritually, and I feel like it was a good reset for me.
Yeah, forced rest. I think he does that because especially people who run at our pace, and I do not mean me physically running on the street because you cannot catch me running, but I mean just like our pace in life, the way we, I don't know, not necessarily go after goals. That's part of it, but just we're constantly moving and feeling like what's next, or what do we pursue next? And I feel like the Lord has, I'll say, invited me, even though it's more like forced, into seasons of stopping. And it's because I wouldn't choose to do it on my own. But that wilderness, like we talked about, and the rest and the reflection is so much a part of the process of actually deepening a relationship with him, or like you said, resetting those places that like, are you doing this in your strength? Is this all on your own shoulders, or do you actually trust me with it? And the amount of times, I think especially over the last year, that God has been like, can you trust that even when you're not moving at all, I'm the one doing it, I'm the one working, and it's really more about me than it is about you.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I've definitely been feeling that, especially lately, because like I said, I had surgery last December, was rehabbing really all the beginning of the year through May. felt pretty good in the summer, and now it's like my hip is hurting again. And I almost feel like, even though I know that I can ask for the same prayer requests from my friends and like continue to talk about those things, like my friends have never once said like, hey, I'm sick of hearing about that. But I feel like I felt so discouraged in the last couple months of like, I sound like a broken record. And even with the Lord, I think this is something he revealed to me a couple weeks ago. I was starting to feel like, oh man, maybe even the Lord doesn't care about those things anymore, which is such a lie from the enemy. But I just was feeling so discouraged. And even the church I was going to in the summer, like something I really, really enjoy about the church is that they always save space at the end of the service to come and receive prayer. And I just started going to this church, and I just went up there just feeling so discouraged, not even really knowing necessarily, like, I don't even think I really went up to the front saying like
specifically
I need prayer for my
physically.
hip. I just remember, or like, for physical healing, but I just remember the Lord like prompted me to go up there, and a woman, I don't even know what she looked like. I have no idea who it was because my eyes are closed, but I just remember a woman coming up and saying like, there's something torn in your body that the Lord wants to heal.
Whoa.
And I'm like, I just immediately like broke down and cried, and for me, like, I feel like so many people after are like, well, how does your hip feel? Are you healed? And like, even though I've not experienced physical like supernatural healing, even though I know he can do it and I pray for it all the time now, but I feel like that was such a reminder of like, the Lord cares.
He sees it.
Yes. And like, to me, that meant so much more to me that Sunday. This was back in June, maybe even July. I feel like it was just such a reminder again of like the Lord's heart and his character is that like nothing is unimportant to him. Like every detail of my life, even the things that I feel frustrated praying for or like I'm continuously dealing with, like I could never be able to run again. And it's like I have to trust that like he still cares, and like even the smallest details of my life, like his hand is in it. And I've still, like, again, I've not experienced some kind of supernatural healing in my hip. I'm probably going to have a surgery, but it has been such a reminder of like, he sees me and he cares about even the smallest things that, I don't know, that I'm even tired of like praying for. It's just like, I want to continue to press in and just trust that like he has a reason for all of this.
My mom used to say all the time, it's about the heart. It's about the heart. And I think so often I want to see things as, is it what I want, or physical signs of seeing his movement or his work, but really learning and hearing from him your exact concern, which is, does he care about this anymore? And it's that he does. And we have to be able to surrender the results and just know that he cares, that it is his heart. Yeah.
It's not easy.
No, no. Are you kidding? I feel like every day with that. And it's constantly that place over and over again. I was telling you, like, I think one of the things the Lord is teaching me is a lot about invitation. He invites us into things. And the more I can see it as like, he's inviting me learn to know more about his heart, inviting me to be closer and more dependent on him rather than the result of what I'm hoping for. Cause ultimately that still puts me in the control seat of my life. But how do I continue to surrender and see the invitation of what he's trying to show me? Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. It's beautiful.
Okay. Well, now you've decided Jacksonville's home. What do you hope is next? Or what do you sense is next? Yeah.
I feel like I don't know. This is a hard question for me because I feel like I'm someone that I feel like I have a hard time like having a balance of like planning for the future and hoping for the future, but also living solely in the moment.
Right.
So I feel like I definitely, like, for the foreseeable future, am in Jax. Jax feels like home. Do I miss my Tennessee friends? For sure.
Yeah.
But for me, something I hope that is next is really just finding a career path that I love. And I feel like my job has been great for me, and I feel like I've learned so much, but I'm really just wanting to kind of figure out what's next career-wise and be able to just do something that I'm passionate about. And I feel like that's something that I'm still navigating and figuring out again. Like, being in your 20s, it's been so fun to kind of just like figure it out, and I don't think I'm ever gonna get there and like have it all like, I don't know, perfectly wrapped up with a bow. But I do feel like I really do want to plant deeper roots career-wise. I really want to get deeper into serving in my church and even in the local community. Like, I feel like I was so connected where I went to college, where I grew up. So I really do want to just be connected more locally in Jacksonville, whatever that looks like, whether that's serving with the church or getting involved in some different things here. But yeah, I just really want to plant deep roots here.
And weekly pickleball.
And weekly pickleball, of course. I mean, and hopefully a husband eventually.
Listen,
I mean,
yes.
we are always hoping for that, but
100%.
yes, so that's what we're hoping for.
Okay. Well, we also can ask people to pray about that for you, just like more direction, and not the husband part. Sorry, I meant career-wise. I mean both. We will.
We can pray for the husband part as well.
We will
I'll
not
take
limit
all
that.
the prayers for the hip, for the husband. I need to what's another H? Hip, husband, and
Happenings, career happenings. I don't know.
the 3 happenings.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. We'll figure something out. Okay. So before we wrap up, Kennedy, what would you say is the one word that you would use to describe the current chapter of your story?
Yes, I feel like I've been thinking about this a little bit, and it needs a little bit of an explanation, but I feel like the word that's really been coming up for me is becoming. And I know we talked about that a little bit through brunch, but I feel like, again, I've said it 5 times during this, but so much I feel like of your 20s is really just figuring things out. And I feel like a word that keeps coming up is becoming. Who are you becoming? And I feel like so much of the beginning of my 20s was truly just rediscovering my identity, rediscovering the heart of God. But now it's so much more of okay, now that you are a little more established, you know who you are a little bit more, you kind of got your identity sorted out and you're trusting me, still, who are you becoming? And I think so much of it is just a process. And it's something I'm never going to just arrive at. I'm never going to just be this person that's perfectly, I don't know, got it all figured out, but it's going to continuously be a process. And I just truly, when I think about work and being a good roommate, being a good friend, being a daughter that lives states away, truly, who are you becoming, and are you proud of the person that you are becoming right now? So I feel like it's so much of still just continuously stripping away the old. And I don't know, I want to be someone that is just always reflecting on, how was my attitude about work? How was my, how did I respond in that situation? And I really feel like this is a perfect season just to continue, I don't know, just to self-reflect and just work on the hard things, especially, if I do want to end up dating or getting married. I truly want to be the person I'm looking for is also looking for. So I feel like it's so much of who are you becoming? What are you doing? And where are you going? And am I trusting the Lord through all of that? So that was a lot.
No, I love that, and I think there's something so beautiful about the process of it all. I think there's so often that we want to just arrive, and I think the process of becoming, as we talked about at brunch, is something that often we lose sight of. Who do we want to be when we get there? It's just we think about getting there. And the process of sanctification, we talk about a lot of the becoming more and more like Jesus. But it's even in the small things of I can't be an athlete unless I train. I can't expect to be a runner unless I start with a walk. I can't expect to be, like we talked about, a disciplined reader of the Bible unless I start somewhere. I have to open it. I have to own it, even that. And being the kind of wife or mom or any of those things, it starts with the small disciplines now. So I love that. I love becoming. Well, I'm so grateful for you. And I honestly feel like this is going to have to be a repeat guest episode because I even just in sitting at brunch and even over this podcast, I feel like there's so much that God's done to intertwine our lives. And I feel like I learned so much from you, and there's so many deep roots there that he's started early. We talked about at brunch, I was reading Proverbs 4 this week, and it says, wisdom will cost you everything. But I think but he adds to our life when he gives us wisdom. So I do think there is such a beauty and a wisdom of the different journeys you've taken. I'm just so glad I'm a part of it.
Yeah. Thanks, Ellie. Thanks for having me on the podcast and for being my friend and playing pickleball with me. So can't wait for many more.
Oh, so much more pickleball. Okay. So the question is, how can people follow you, support you, any of the above?
You can follow me at KenBrook10 on Instagram. I'll be honest, I don't really have a lot of other avenues to follow me on, not really in the TikTok world. If you want to support me becoming King Curtis 2.0, I guess just drop me a DM and give me an encouragement. We can do that. Or if you know where I can go career-wise, we can connect on LinkedIn. Just find me on there, Kennedy Blair.
I love it so much, especially because number one, her your Europe content right now is fire and people need to support that. And also you recently were like, if the dating apps aren't working, maybe we should just start searching names we like on LinkedIn and see if there's people.
I'm telling you, that's how we're going to find husbands, is through LinkedIn, okay? Forget the Hinge, forget the Bumble. You got to start going on LinkedIn, seeing where they work, seeing where they went to school. Like, I think I might pitch this to LinkedIn.
I think
LinkedIn
you should.
dating. I think this could be my big break.
Facebook dating didn't take off, but I think LinkedIn could.
LinkedIn dating could really work out for me. So
yeah.
Stay tuned, people. If LinkedIn dating becomes a thing, you have me to thank. No one steal this idea.
Patented and protected per this podcast.
Who else is here for King Curtis 2.0? I really think we should spam Kennedy's Instagram with comments asking for that reenactment. She is such a bright light, and I'm so glad you tuned in to hear more of her story. Kennedy inspires me to be more faithful to God because she trusts him so wholeheartedly with the big decisions and scary circumstances of her life, but also just invites him into her friendships and daily activities. I'd love for you to follow her and tell her what you learned from her story in the comments on our Instagram. And speaking of, please follow me and the show on Instagram. You can find all of those accounts, including Kennedy's, in the show notes. I'd also love if you could rate and review the podcast. It really helps the show reach new audiences, and it really means so much to me. And while you're at it, I'd love for you to share this episode with someone who you think could benefit from hearing Kennedy's stories. And whenever you're listening to this, I'd also invite you to pray for Kennedy as she goes in for surgery on her hip in the coming weeks. Pray for her doctors, a speedy recovery, and more insight into what God is doing in her life. Thank you so much for tuning in, friends. I'm so excited to see you back here on Thursday.